到华视最国际的节目现场，我是廖林丽玲。我们知道，在乌俄开战以来呢，其实有数百万的难民都流离失所。那这所代表的呢，不只是一个冷冰冰的数字而已，而是有很多的人、很多的家人呢流离失所。那么没有呢地方可以安身立命。那全世界应该如何的来帮助乌克兰的难民呢？我们知道呢，在欧盟呢，现在是由法国担任轮值主席国，所以我们今天很高兴在节目现场为您邀请到的是法国在台协会的代表呢，来跟我们分享法国以及欧盟还有台湾可以如何的合作，来进一步的帮助乌克兰的难民。那今天我们在节目现场为您所邀请到的公孙孟主任呢，他过去曾经在东京担任过秘书，也曾经在突尼西亚大使馆担任过参事。那么在2012年也在加拿大的多伦多领事馆担任领事。从2019年开始呢，他担任的是法国在台协会的代表，也就是法国在台协会的主任。我们今天呢很高兴邀请公孙孟主任来到我们的节目现场，跟我们分享他的观点。Thank you for coming, Mr. Casabon. Yeah, my first question is, what is the stance of the French government on the Russian invasion of Ukraine?
From the very beginning of the crisis, from the very beginning of the war,
yes.
We, France, and together with our European partner, we condemn in the hardest way this invasion of a free country, of a sovereign country. And there's no way to solve any kind of issue in that kind of war. So that's the hardest condemnation we can have.
Yes. And what is the biggest need for the Ukrainian refugees in your country?
The first need they have, the refugees and the whole Ukrainian population, is to feel our solidarity. The solidarity of all sovereign nations, all populations who share the same values and the same need for security. And they have no more security for them, so we need to help them to have this security back and peace. Mm-hmm. So we need to, of course, give humanitarian help to the population, but we have many other ways to support Ukraine and its population, and we can go on this and develop those different kind of help.
Yeah, and what has the French government done to improve the humanitarian situation in Ukraine?
So there's a huge diplomatic effort from France and the European Union, but France has a special responsibility. We are the presidency of the Council of European Union.
Yes.
We are a permanent member of the Security Council of the United Nations. Mm-hmm. We are a member of G7. So in different councils, in different areas, we need to gain the maximum countries supporting the Ukraine and the Ukrainian fight for their sovereignty and for their peace. So this is why the President Macron is having so many conversations with different leaders in the world in order to go back to peace and to the negotiation, of course. There is another kind of help which is unfortunately necessary, which is helping Ukraine in having military defense equipment. So we are helping Ukraine in that way. And we have to support the Ukrainian economy as well, because it's still working and not so bad considering the situation. So we have, together with the other European countries, having a strong, very strong financial support for Ukraine, more than 1.2 billion euro already decided at the European level to help financing the Ukrainian government. And of course, the most urgent, of course, is helping the population. In all ways, the refugees who are in Europe and those who are refugees in Ukraine as well. So we need to give help, all kind of equipment that they would need, and when they are in our countries, to welcoming as well as we can.
And is all aid going directly to Ukraine or to the neighboring country?
Both, I would say, both. Of course, we are acting not only at the governmental level, there's also a lot of help coming from the local levels, from the enterprises, from the local governments. And of course, we are also acting through the European agencies and the international agencies. So you have all those different channels, all those ways to channel the aid to the different populations.
Yes， 好，那我们知道说，其实刚刚公孙孟主任呢，就是有提到说，其实欧盟当然还有法国呢，就是有提供了非常多的人道方面的援助呢，给了乌克兰的难民。那我们也看到，像是有就是包括法国部分的话，有提供一些防御性的武器、一些药品。那美国这边呢，英国呢也都有包括像食品啦、医疗包等等哦。那我们台湾也是募集了很多的口罩、毛毯。那日本这边呢，也有包括一些生活用品等等哦。那接下来我们就要进一步的再来请教公孙孟主任呢，就是说有哪一些比较具体的措施哦，是在法国呢帮助当地的这个乌克兰难民的哦。So, Mr. Casaubon, next question is: have any measures been taken to assist, to help, to support the Ukrainian refugees in France?
Yes, of course. As I said, the first thing is we have to take into consideration the will of the refugees, and the fact is that the refugees, they want to go where they will have their families or their friends already there to welcome them. And before the crisis, it happens that we have a small community of Ukrainian in France. So the number of Ukrainians who decide to be refugee in France is quite small compared to other countries. More or less 30,000 people are refugee. It's mainly families, maybe a woman, older people, and children. And the men
Before the war or right now?
Now. Yes, now. So of course, the emergency is on the countries which are at the border of Ukraine. I mean Poland, I mean Romania, and Hungary. And so we need to help them, of course. They are a member of the EU, and we need to help them to face this situation of huge crisis. And we know that the best efforts are made by the population. And we have a lot of information on the generosity of the people in Poland or in Hungary. Not only the government, but the population first is helping a lot. So it's very important for us to give them the best conditions for their installations. We don't know how long it will last, but by example, they need to have a normal life as much as possible. They need to have people to help them to understand the language, of course, and then one of the priority is to have the children going to schools and to meet with other children, French children, and to have a normal life. And then there's a special lessons in the schools. So
special lesson, what do you mean by that?
I mean that what is important is that on one hand they are mixed with other children, French children, they can play together, they can discover each other, and on the other hand, of course, because they don't necessarily speak the French language, they need a special aid and education.
And can you share any stories that moved you?
Precisely that kind of stories of children, French children welcoming some Ukrainian children in the schools, and the children discovering each other and adapting very fast, as we know the children are doing always, adapting to each other and discovering each other, and the young Ukrainian explaining what is the same and what is different from their own school, their own life before the war. So that was very moving, because in one way you could have the feeling that it was so easy. And in the same time, we know that it's a terrible crisis and that those populations are facing terrible situations.
我们接下来看下一章，就有关于这个欧盟哦。其实现在有27个欧盟的国家，目前这个成员啊，那我们可以看到，就是北从芬兰、瑞典啦，南到西班牙、意大利、马耳他这边啊。那我们也看到，这个乌克兰哦，它其实一直很想要加入欧盟哦。那所以我们现在就是要来请教一下公孙孟主任，就是说，有关于就是乌克兰加入欧盟的这件事情哦，是不是在未来是可以期待的哦？所以next question, what is the official position of the European Union regarding Ukraine's admission to the EU?
Okay. You have to keep in mind that entering the EU is not just a club you want to enter, and then the next day you are a member. It doesn't work like this. The EU process is a legal process. So before entering, you have to accept all the rules inside the EU, for example, the rules regarding the trade, the economy, of course, the rule of law, the justice, the way we organize the justice, etc., the fight against corruption, by example, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So you have to prove that you already apply the European rules, and it takes time. So you have different steps. The first step is express your will to be a member. And on our side in Europe, of course, we see a lot of good reason for Ukraine to be a member of the EU. But this will not be the solution of the crisis. Maybe it will accelerate the process. But the process will take time. And of course, it doesn't mean that we do not do anything with Ukraine before. On the contrary, because we already have huge cooperations with Ukraine, and we will improve them. Even if Ukraine is not a member of the EU, we do not wait to help them.
呀，好，那另外就是有关于 NATO 的问题，刚刚讲到的是欧盟啊，那其实 NATO 这个呢，也是这一次发生战争的一个很主要的原因，就是因为俄罗斯呢，它是没有办法接受乌克兰加入 NATO 北大西洋公约组织。那北大西洋公约组织，我们可以在画面上看到，它其实有30个成员，包括美国、加拿大哦，那还有呢，就是在这个中东的土耳其这边。那最近有个新闻，就是北约也增兵在东边的4个国家，包括斯洛伐克、匈牙利、罗马尼亚跟保加利亚哦。那么现在呢，乌克兰的总统泽伦斯基已经表示说呢，现在乌克兰呢是不会加入北约，这个态势上呢有一点软化的趋势，所以我们也好奇的想来问一下公孙孟主任有关于就是说 NATO 跟 Ukraine 之间、乌克兰之间的关系哦。So my next question is, how do you view the current relations between Ukraine and NATO?
For the moment, it's a little bit complicated to see a clear situation considering the crisis, the war. Happening today, but I think you mean in the future. There's a general issue which is very important. It was important, and it will be in the future, whatever the future is, which is the organization of the security in Europe, in the whole Europe. Member of the EU, member of the North Atlantic organizations, and other countries. We need to find a way to live peacefully together. Being a member of the NATO is one solution, but not the only one. And so we need to sit back at the table of negotiations to discuss all countries of the region on that issue. But what is sure is that the worst solution is war. And this must never be forgotten. War cannot be a way to achieve your targets. And for no countries. That's why we need to go back to the negotiations, including for discuss the point of the situation of Ukraine towards NATO.
呀，好，那接下来就是说，其实从这次的战争里面还注意到一件事情，那就是呢，欧盟实在是很多的国家都非常的依赖俄罗斯的能源哦。我们在这个画面上我们可以看到，就是颜色越深的，就是越依赖俄罗斯的能源，尤其是天然气的这些国家，包括像是德国啊、匈牙利等等哦。那在法国、西班牙这边，相对来讲，这个依赖的程度就没有那么高哦。所以现在这个有关于欧盟太依赖俄罗斯这件事情，也成了欧盟跟这些国家的一些很重要的问题哦。So my next question is, how can Europe achieve energy independence from Russia?
By finding other ways to produce its own energy, of course. Probably we all need, not only in Europe, to diversify the source of energy. That's a general movement for all governments in the world, including in Taiwan, I guess. And so we need to work all together between the European countries to diversify the sources of energy. In the short terms, we need to find other sources to buy gas. And on the medium and long term, maybe we need to work more and to accelerate in the direction of other solutions.
How can France and Taiwan cooperate in order to help Ukraine?
I think I mentioned it at the beginning. I think one of the most important things, and it's not symbolic, it's very important, is to show our solidarity. And for Taiwanese people, I think that receiving the support of a population so far on the other side of the world, this is very meaningful, I guess, for Europeans and especially for Ukrainians today. Our solidarity is based on our belief in the same values, based on the need for peace that we all wish, need for peace, need for stability. And we need to fight all together on that. Of course, second thing is that we need to help the refugees. And on the long term, as I hope as soon as possible, there will be a huge need for rebuild Ukraine, rebuild the cities, the houses, the hospitals, the schools who have been destroyed by the Russian army. And at that moment, that will be another moment where Ukraine and France and European countries will all stand together to help the Ukraine and to build their own future.
OK， 好，我们今天非常谢谢公孙孟主任来到我们的节目现场，为我们来就是关心这个从乌克兰现在越来越多的难民在乌克兰以外的地区哦，我们也看到欧盟、看到法国还有台湾是如何的一起来是帮助这些难民。那我们相信呢，这未来哦，就是在全世界的齐心之下，应该这些难民会得到更多安身立命的地方。Thank you for coming.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yes， 我们也希望呢，在这里哦，祝福乌克兰这个国家跟人民哦，这和平早日到来，亲人早日团聚。谢谢您的收看，我们稍微休息一下，马上回来。
我是陈雅玲，想要跟我一起从零掌握天下事吗？赶紧按下华视新闻 YouTube 频道的订阅按钮，开启小铃铛，跟我一起探讨公共议题，给您最专业的华视新闻。